y'all, welcome back to Cooking with Siobhan. I'm Siobhan Muir, and today we are going to make Greek olive bread. I got this recipe in an old recipe book and I was reading it and it made no sense. So we had to find another recipe that kind of mirrored it so we could figure out. So we're kind of combining two recipes, but in the end it'll make sense and then you'll have a bread that'll be good. So what are you going to need? You are going to need 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 large onion chopped, large, medium, small, just 1 onion, the whole thing chopped up into decent sized pieces. We use kind of a medium onion. If you want to do a large one, you can. If you want to do a small one, whatever you'd like. 4 to 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Of course, we're doing the 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, but you're going to need a little over 4 cups for it. You'll need, if you were going to use black olives for this, you would need 2 teaspoons of salt. Because I'm going to use Kalamata olives, which are a Greek olive, and they're a little more salty than the black olives. I've cut the salt down to 1 teaspoon of salt. I think that with the Kalamata olives, you don't want to overdo the salt because you're gonna get salty bread. Then you need, they say 1 can pitted black olives, drained and coarsely chopped. I'm doing Kalamata olives, so I would say this is about 1 small can of black olives. I just kind of winged it because it didn't say an amount that you could put in like a measuring cup. So that looks right to me, we're doing that. 1 envelope of active dry yeast or 2.5 teaspoons of dry yeast. 1 cup of hot water. It's not hot yet, but 1 cup of water. And then oil for greasing. I'm also adding, because I'm doing this gluten-free, I'm adding an egg. Egg works as a binder, and if I want to keep my bread from crumbling, that's kind of what I'm doing with why I'm adding the egg. So the first thing it says is heat 2 tablespoons of oil in a skillet. So we'll do that. And then add the onion and cook gently for about 5 minutes until soft and lightly colored. I was going to say a little translucent, but what we'll do is we'll turn this to a little over medium heat, and then I will add a couple tablespoons of oil, and then we'll start sauteing the onion. It's always good to set this up. I know my husband likes to do, he likes to heat the skillet then add the oil. I don't do that. We're different cooks. But what I'm doing is I'm adding the oil and letting it heat up slowly. Keep your tablespoon because you're going to need it for later. 2 tablespoons of oil is quite a bit of oil. So I'm just going to coat the bottom of this thing and let it heat up a little bit. Then I'm going to add the onion and we will do some sauteing of the onion. What they're going to have you do is saute it and then set it aside to cool because you will add it into the bread and you're going to knead it into the bread, so you don't want it to be burning hot when you do that because it's not really very much fun to add burning hot stuff to your bread when you're trying to manipulate it. Alright, so what we're going to do is, now that the oil is warm, and we're not talking hot, we just want it warm, we're going to add in the onions. And my suggestion is once you get them in there, start moving them around so they're coated with oil. This helps saute them and so they won't burn, because the last thing you want this thing to do is burn. It also helps break up if you're cutting, you cut up some onions and they didn't quite get into the smaller pieces. This helps break them up. All right, so let them start cooking and sauteing. Again, it's only slightly warm at the moment. It's not like burning, but on a little more than medium, it'll start cooking up pretty quick. This is the right color you're looking for. You're kind of getting a little translucent, and everything needs to be kind of soft. You want it to be soft because eventually you're going to bake the onion because it'll be in the bread, but you want it to start off soft. Nobody wants crunchy onion in their bread. They want something that's tasty. It might look like a lot of oil, but remember, you're going to take this whole thing and throw it into the bread. So this is part of the 3 tablespoons you're putting in the bread. It is absorbed by the onion, and then we're almost done, I think. We're almost ready to set it aside. And we have been doing this for probably about 5 or 6 minutes. But yeah, you can see how it's kind of translucent, you know, see there? And they're very soft. And there's a lot of oil, but again, this is going to end up going into the bread. All right, that's about where you want it. So what you do is you take that off the heat, set it aside to cool, and you are done with your onion. Save your tool because you're going to use that to scrape it into the bowl. All right, so set that aside. Now we're going to make the bread part. So what do you need? You need 4 to 4.5 cups of gluten-free flour. That is 4 cups, and I think we'll start with that. You could probably do more if you wanted it, but really, what's the point? Then you're going to sift flour and salt together. Here's the salt. And you're going to whisk those together. Whisk them gently. You don't need to be excited about this. This is just 2 white things together, and you're going to end up with something rather exciting. Now, what it says is stirred in chopped olives, and then you're going to add the onion. I want to let that cool a little longer before I'm going to do that, so I think I'll put in the olives by itself, and I'm going to probably use a spoon rather than a whisk because these things are a little wetter, and you're going to want something that can really manipulate them. Now, you'll notice I have a few olives out on the side. These are going to be used for garnish on the top to kind of make the bread look pretty when you're done. But the chopped stuff we will put in just like this. And again, these last few olives, those will go on the top as garnish. This is where you're going to want to manipulate it, kind of like get olives everywhere if you can. You don't want big clumps of olives, you want them to be spread out throughout your dough because this whole thing is going to be 1 loaf of bread. If this was a more liquid dough, you'd be folding the olives in, but we want to get this started before we put the onions in. So it's going to look like lumpy white powder is really what it looks like. Now, with this, you can use this, but I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll use a spatula. This gets all the oil that's still in the pan into the powdered dough. And that's the whole thing, is you want to get as much oil as you can along with all the onion into the bowl. All right, again, this is another one of those things where you want to really manipulate this to get it everywhere. Okay. Now that you have even more chunkier looking dough, it says stir in the yeast and mix thoroughly. I might use both tools. I think I'll start with the whisk to see if I can get the yeast throughout the dough. It doesn't move as easily because it's more than just powder, but the whisk does a pretty good job in getting things kind of everywhere. And then I'll follow up with the wooden spoon to make sure that my olives and my onions are still distributed throughout. I think if I make this again, I think I would add the yeast first. That would get it better distributed, and then add the olives and the onion. But it looks like we did an okay job. Make a shallow well in the center and pour the warm water and the egg into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the water in my microwave, They want it to be hot water here. I would set this for maybe a minute. You want it to be hot. You don't want it to be burning, but you want it to be hot. You could also get away with 45 seconds, but I think I would do it for a minute. I heat my tea up for a minute. When I have to reheat it, I tend to heat my tea up for about a minute, and that's really warm but not burn your tongue hot. While I do that, I'm going to make a shallow well here. And I'm going to pour the egg into it. Again, because I'm doing a gluten-free recipe, this is a way to make sure that the bread is bound together. So you're not getting just a crumbly mess that there's a lot of complaints about people with gluten-free bread. Now with your hot-ish water, again, add it to that shallow well, and then start making your dough. Now, because this is gluten-free, you might find that you need more water. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the rice flour is so much drier. You might need something to convince it that it really does want to stick together as a dough. Although it's not too bad. But I think it needs some encouragement. This is about 1/4 cup more water. And I didn't use all of it. I used about 1/8, I think. I'm always amazed by gluten-free flour is that it looks like it's not coming together. Like you're never going to get this stuff to become a dough. And then suddenly it goes, oh, you mean you all want it all stuck together? Oh, well, why didn't you say so? Okay, so for this recipe, I would say you're going to need like a 1.25 cups of water in addition to the egg, because otherwise the bread will forget that it's supposed to be together. But now in the original recipe it says need for about 10 minutes. You don't need to knead for 10 minutes. You want it to get into a ball though. Shape the dough into a ball and then gently press it out with the palm of your hand into about a 10-inch circle. Then place the dough on the prepared cookie sheet. So once you've kneaded it all together, you're going to let it rise, okay? So what we'll do, ooh, where'd you go? Get back in there. All right, so they said make it into a ball, which I will do in just a second. It's a lumpy ball, but it's a ball. And then they said press it out to about 10 inches. And because it's gluten-free, it doesn't stick to anything. I really like that. However, I do suggest when you're baking this to definitely use parchment paper to bake your bread. And I'm gonna leave it there for just a moment. This recipe says, score a diamond pattern in the surface of the dough and cover with greased plastic wrap to leave to rise for about an hour or until dough is doubled in size. This is gluten-free, we'll see if it doubles. About 20 minutes before the dough is ready for baking, preheat the oven to 420 degrees Fahrenheit, 212 degrees Celsius. I don't remember. But this other recipe says, we cover with oiled plastic wrap and leave for a warm place for an hour or until doubled in size. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. Brush loaves with a little of the cooking oil. Bake them for 30 to 40 minutes or until the bottom of each sounds hollow when tapped. What we'll do is we'll let that rise for about an hour. They want to cover it with oiled plastic wrap I'm not sure I'm gonna do that. Here's the reason. I have tried letting things rise with plastic wrap on it. What it does is it grows and grows and grows until it stretches the plastic wrap. And then you take the plastic wrap off and the thing goes. That's really disappointing when you're trying to get a lovely loaf of bread. So what I think I'll do is I think I will brush the top with oil now, let it kind of grow as it wants to, and then we will do the whole baking thing in a little bit. So let's start with this. And it says you can do a tablespoon of oil, but really what I'm just gonna do is drizzle it and brush it. And again, with the gluten-free, it's a lot drier, so it's not going to be weirded out by the oil. It'll just pretty much stay where you want it. It won't get caught on your brush, it won't break apart. Leave this somewhere warm-ish and out of the wind. Let it rise and we'll see when we're ready to bake. So the timer just went off, the oven is ready. We have decided that what we're baking this at is, because it is, you know, a 10-inch round that is doing its thing, ta-da, that we are going to bake it at 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 191 degrees Celsius. And right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the olives into the top of it. It rose a little bit. It totally rose a little bit. Ta-da! All right. Then you're supposed to bake it for 35 minutes. I'm hoping this will turn out awesome. So set your timer for 35 minutes and set it to go. And then hopefully it rose a little bit, but hopefully it'll expand because of the heat and everything. And you'll get a fairly fluffy, coherent piece of bread that's got olives and onions in it. I did notice that there's no sugar in this recipe. So if this is, I'm hoping it turns out good, but if it's a delicious recipe, this is a great recipe for people who need to watch their sugar intake. So we'll see you in about 35 minutes and see how it turns out when it's expanded. Okay, the timer just went off. Oh, it smells really good though. It says cool completely on a wire rack before cutting. I think it needs a little bit longer. Yeah, I think I would do it for 10 more minutes at this temperature. There is no butter in this recipe, but I'm adding it. An egg wash is good too, but we'll start with 5 minutes and see how that goes. All right, so seem to be about 45 minutes. Oh, sorry, 40 minutes. And what you need to do is let it cool for about, they said cool completely on a wire rack. I would let it cool for about 10 minutes, move it to the wire rack, and then let it cool forever. Yeah, let's give it about 10 minutes and see how it looks then. It was very smart to cut the salt, because if your olives are kept in brine, they will add the salt to the bread. So we didn't overestimate the salt, which is good. I think it's good. I'm wondering if adding the egg made it a little more dense. It's not bad. I'm not unhappy with it. At the moment, I can't think of what I would do different, but it's not bad. If you like olive bread and you need it gluten-free, this is not bad. It's not fluffy, but it's also not rock hard. Like, you're not going to be eating solid. I will enjoy eating it. It is much more solid than, so you get a really fluffy light bread that you would dip in olive oil and stuff like that. And you could do that with this, not a problem. But it is dense, comparatively. I call that a success. Thank you for joining us. Definitely ring the bell to find out when there's new videos. Subscribe to the channel, same deal. You'll find out when there's new videos. And ring the bell up there. Also join me on Patreon. I know it seems like a strange thing to say on a YouTube channel, but I would definitely suggest that you join Patreon. One, it helps me as the author and the cook stay afloat, because a little bit every month really helps a lot, especially if it's only, $3 to $5 a month. It really helps me a lot. Plus you get all sorts of things like first looks at my books, cover reveals. You get little bits of writing that you can't find anywhere else. There is an exclusive serial story there. So definitely sign up for that, and that's at patreon.com/Siobhan Muir. Happy making, happy baking, happy eating, and happy reading. Talk to you later. Bye.